If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi Murders Case Series. This is episode 26, Tracing Connections. And we are going to continue to look at this individual, Kegan Kline, who may or may not be responsible for any crimes that have to do with the Delphi case, or may not know the individuals responsible in the Delphi case. These are all, of course, unknowns at the moment. If you haven't checked out the previous episodes, make sure you check those out so you're up to date on everything. We'll be referencing information previously gone over. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. You could also support the podcast by becoming a YouTube member, and we will be having roundtable chats and such for members only in certain cases where we will go over specifics with people who are already familiar with a lot of the cases, as to not have a mass general chat madness, as always happens in public videos, of course, that people who are looking at the case for the first time have a lot of questions that, of course, people that are familiar with the case already know the answers to, so it could be a little bit more efficient to have those separated. And again, you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock and look at the main page to become a member. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons also get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests, so you can check us out on Patreon as well. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. All right, so there's a lot more information coming out on Kegan Kline. A lot of mind-shocking information, and there is yet even more. So, I was not aware of this, and I don't know how many people familiar with the case are aware of this, but supposedly, Kegan Kline did an interview with the Down the Hill podcast. Now, before everybody starts to rush to the Down the Hill podcast to find the episode, no, it has not been publicly released. But there are a lot of curiosities as to why Kegan Kline would even give an interview on this subject and the manner in which it was conducted. And this is what we will be going over. Once again, we are going to the subreddit r/Delphi Murders, which is, it's a big mismatch there. I mean, there's logical people there. There are obviously illogical people. Dunning-Kruger always a huge issue anytime you're looking at a popular case with a lot of people wanting to throw in their 2 cents without being able to comprehend even basic logical fallacies. So it's a little bit problematic in sifting through a lot of this information, but occasionally there's very good information on this subreddit. I'll go over it now. But pretty much the producer on the Down the Hill Delphi podcast talked to Kegan Kline, and this is an unaired interview. Now, this interview is listed as evidence regarding the Anthony Schatz account and the Kegan Kline investigation. So this producer, Barbara McDonald, who has also reported on the case throughout, we went over tweets before, but in the previous episode. So this is actually not from the Delphi Murder subreddit, it's from Delphi Docs, DOCS, which I'm assuming refers to documents in the case, and this post is by Cicada Sounds. Did Barbara McDonald turn Kegan Anthony Kline in? And it references, there's a screenshot here. The filing is a one-page document that states in relevant part that the following has been provided to the attorney for the defendant. A disc with Barbara McDonald, podcaster, interview with Kegan Kline sent, and CD/DVD with statement of Kegan Kline dated August 19th, 2020. The response was, I wonder why he would have done an interview with a podcaster. I'm sure his attorney was thrilled to get that info. I mean, it's a curious question. It's definitely curious. Now, apparently, Barbara McDonald also, so she interviewed him several days after she made this one particular tweet here on October 15th, 2020. When we made Down the Hill podcast about the Delphi murders, we hoped Bridge Guy would listen. I certainly hope he has binged the entire season. I know he's curious. Now it's time for him to talk. I'm listening. Huh. Some responses here on the subreddit. Seems related. He would have been in jail at that point. Either he contacted her or she was tipped on the arrest and possible connection to Delphi. Favored journalists often receive tips like that, especially if they have a national presence. Huh. Couple more things here. Someone tweeted her, did you interview Kegan Anthony Kline for the podcast? If so, in what capacity? Member of the search party, ? Did he seek you wanting to be interviewed, ? Did he give the sense that he followed the case and what the media is releasing with a sense of that is not normal, ? Spitballing. Barbara interviewed Kegan Anthony Kline, following up on the early publicized warrants, talked to him over the phone in a one-party consent state. What he said to her was slightly different from what he told law enforcement. Did it make air due to ongoing investigation, perhaps? Am I warm? And so she did not reply, but she liked the tweet. Make of that what you will. So other people also speculate that she's under some kind of a gag order. Another post here, it wouldn't answer anything or lead to anything that would solve this case, but I'd love to know the timing of everything in regards to the HLN Kegan Anthony Kline interview. It wasn't added to the court's website. Only after the Anthony Shots Kegan Anthony Kline news broke did McDonald remember the name, went back through her interviews, and submit it to law enforcement at that time. Did she reach out to Kline for the interview? I assume she did while researching the Peru warrant, but it's possible that Kline spoke to McDonald in some other capacity. Why the hell did he grant an interview with a podcaster? Seems incredibly unwise. Now, yeah, I mean, that is a curiosity. So if he's truly responsible for the crimes, would he do that? I mean, maybe. There are crazy people out there, crazy killers. They like the attention. They want the spotlight. They show up to the crime scene. They show up to funerals. They do interviews in the public in various media outlets. It's like they like the attention. It's like a new level of duper's delight. Not only do they revel in the fact that they got away with it or are currently getting away with it, but they want to rub it in everybody's face as well. So that is a certain type of criminal. Is that who we're dealing with here? Again, we really don't know because we don't have enough information. And we really don't know if law enforcement has enough information either. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, to make that determination. Another post, hear me out, I was reviewing the charges against Kline and remembered the information/image I've posted here. McDonald interviews him on the 19th per the label on the CD she gives law enforcement. She doesn't live in Indiana, and it seems very doubtful to me that it's happening after he's in custody. I think she was onto something. She is a very skilled journalist, able to gain trust and get valuable info, which she then gave to law enforcement. Could this discovery be what his attorney was negotiating when talks for a plea failed? And I actually went over that in the previous episode. Apparently someone did ask her what she thought of Kline in relation to the Delphi case. She said, quote, sounds like they will need to find a new path to their ultimate target. If Kline could have been charged with anything related to Delphi, I assume they would have done that, end quote. Now, here's the thing, though. There could be a few reasons why she's saying that, but even the phrasing of that, path to ultimate target, it seems like she's, again, saying that Kline is not at least the sole perpetrator or the ultimate perpetrator who committed the murders, but he might know the individual who did, and he may or may not have assisted them in some capacity. Just the phrasing of that. New path to their ultimate target, as if they wanted Kline to be the path to the ultimate target. Of course, that could theoretically mean that Kline doesn't know anything about anything, and it's completely unrelated. Therefore, he cannot provide them with the path to the ultimate target if he doesn't know the ultimate target. But it's so vague. I mean, it's really impossible to know without having more information. I mean, something else we haven't really discussed too much. Do law enforcement know about let's say Kline is let's say he has no real knowledge in the case of the Delphi murders. Let's say law enforcement has some kind of knowledge, some kind of information that leads them to believe that one of Kline's associates or family members either knows the killer, is the killer, somehow has more information. They don't directly state this to Kline, but they want to get Kline to cooperate. Maybe they're leading him on that this about something else that has nothing to do with Delphi, trying to get him to help the investigation, which really is linked to Delphi, but they don't tell Kline that. Would that be the best way to go about it? Now, did Kline somehow begin to suspect it did, or whatever the reason he ceased cooperating, or he doesn't want to give up his dad because he found out it finally did link to the Delphi murders, and maybe law enforcement was trying to get him, or putting up some kind of facade or false narrative that there's other super minor charges that they need his help with in relation to this friend, family member, whoever. And that's why Kline maybe would be more inclined to assist, to cooperate if it's some super small charges, keep everybody out of prison. Maybe he would do it as soon as perhaps there's some kind of, either he gets tipped off by that other family member, or for whatever reason he begins to suspect this is about the Delphi murders and police have absolutely lied to him, which of course they are legally allowed to do in their process of trying to solve cases. So if he found out or began to suspect, then would he cease all cooperation? Is that a possibility for what has occurred here in this Kline saga? A few more posts here. The APC was dated August 19th, 2020, and references that Kline was under surveillance at his girlfriend's house, August 14th and 15th. It seems like the interview might have been in addition to other evidence law enforcement had against him. My guess is the new lead that took over in April 2020 is the one who uncovered the connections. So he was already under surveillance. Now, was he under surveillance for all these other cases or specifically in regards to Delphi? One post here is, ew, he had a girlfriend, question mark. Okay. Another post here, prosecutors have a duty to give criminal defendants all the evidence, even exculpatory evidence. The August 19th, 2020 date seems to be either the date of a CD containing the Kline statement or the date the CD was given to Kline's lawyer. That's what I was initially thinking as well. I'm unclear about the date of McDonald's interview of Kline, and also unclear about the date of the Kline statement on the CD. A response here, in viewing the timeline, I took it to mean Kline made a statement to law enforcement August 19, 2020, which was given to his attorney as discovery December 21st, 2021, per his attorney request. As for the McDonald interview, there is no date given, but it is part of the state's case against him. A few more posts here. Why would he accept an interview if he was bridge guy? This makes me think he is not it. And someone responded, Stephen McDaniel has entered the chat. And Stephen McDaniel murdered and dismembered his neighbor and former classmate. He was interviewed on the news acting distraught about her disappearance. The reporter then informs him that her torso was found in a dumpster in the parking lot, and he looks shocked. Yeah, like I said earlier, there's a lot of different types of individuals out there. So if Kline is the perpetrator and he seeks the limelight in certain ways, maybe he would do an interview. I mean, I don't know. Someone responded, most killers actually do interviews or assist in the search or charity related to the case. And a rebuttal here, most certainly do not. It's not unheard of for sure, and lots of killers like to insert into the aspects of the case, but it's far from most. The stereotypical news clipping boxes, being followers of information groups, etc., is much more common. More than 50% of killers do not up and get involved in search parties and such. So again, I mean, I don't know if we could find exact percentages, because all the unsolved cases, we wouldn't know. An interesting post here. I know they try to be involved in assistant search, but do they hold interviews with journalists after FBI raids their home? Self-preservation must kick in after becoming a POI. Okay, so let's go back to Kegan Kline's timeline regarding Las Vegas. So supposedly from the documentation, one can theorize that apparently Kegan Kline was involved in some kind of trafficking in Vegas. So he was contacting prostitutes of some kind, possibly not of age. Who knows? Or even if of age, there's some kind of illegal activity going on, and that's what law enforcement fixated on. So that's one of the theories out there. Again, I don't know if that's true or untrue. So let's examine the timeline here. So he left the area right after the murders and went to Vegas, but supposedly the trip to Vegas was pre-planned with his father, but he was planning to run away from his father while his father was asleep in Vegas. I mean, if I'm following correctly, let's look at the documents here. So here's the statement. Kegan admitted to speaking to approximately 15 girls that were underage and advised he probably received pictures from every one of them. He advised he saved their pictures to his gallery. During his interview, Kegan stated he was expletive and he should have left. Kegan advised he packed another bag and took it to Las Vegas. Redacted and Kegan returned from Vegas on February 25th, 2017. He stated he was going to leave when his dad was asleep. Kegan told investigators the main phone he uses is the white iPhone 5C. So, I don't know what to make of that statement, and there's no date on exactly when he left to Vegas, but supposedly it was pre-planned. Again, we really don't know. I don't know how they verified that, and apparently he didn't run away because he returned. During the police interview, he admitted to everything and expressed regret that he didn't flee earlier when he was in Vegas. He chickened out, or he realized he'd be in more trouble by becoming a fugitive. So he didn't leave, but returned as planned. Very, very curious. So that's the affidavit. Another poster here said this. He has been doing this expletive for over a year regarding the catfishing and exploitation of minors. Why would he freak out while on a trip with his dad? That's what I was wondering. Apparently, his accounts go back to at least 2015, probably farther. So why, right around mid-February, did he all of a sudden realize he was in trouble? And that's a very good question. So is it possible he was trying to catfish Abby and or Libby, and let's say he failed, and let's say he wasn't involved at all, and maybe there was another catfish, but he thinks he would get in trouble because obviously they ended up murdered, whereas all the other catfish victims did not. Is that why he freaked? So even if he's innocent in this particular case of the murders, he's guilty of all these other things, but he's innocent of the murders, someone else is guilty of the murders, someone he maybe knows, maybe doesn't know. Is it possible he knows them but doesn't know he knows them? Because he's involved with some shady individuals. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of curious questions there. So, some people speculate that he took hard drives with him to Las Vegas to sell to other shady individuals. So, an interesting post here from Wise Menace on the Libyan Abbeys subreddit. I've been wondering this as well, if Lee Kerr is to be believed, which I have a little bit more faith of now. Kline has probably been law enforcement's primary suspect from nearly the beginning. I'm guessing his father provided an alibi. I'm not sure if they claim to have been in Las Vegas during the time of the murders or simply just Peru. I wonder what they claim and what proof there is. According to Lee Kerr, law enforcement was presumably able to geolocate Kegan Kline's phone as being at the CPS building from 12 to 5 when he claimed to be wherever he was claiming for his alibi. So it makes me wonder if Kline's alibi is false or if someone else could have possibly been there with his phone. Those seem like the only two real possibilities if what Lee Kerr says is actually true. I wonder if law enforcement has recovered some implicating messages from the phone. And then, of course, we do have supposedly the secondary phone or the secondary device, which he was not turned over to law enforcement from the Klines. Another very, very disturbing post here. I definitely believe there is much more to the CPS building than Bridge Guy parking there. This, along with the sex trafficking network, will come out once we are all made aware of it by law enforcement. Wow, what a rabbit hole that statement is. So this abandoned CPS building. Was it abandoned or was it just a vehicle abandoned there? I mean, I don't know if it was in use or not. CPS, of course, stands for Child Protective Services. Now, would a network of criminals who are exploiting children, would they choose to operate out of CPS? I mean, that is very, very dark and disturbing, and it seems like something criminals would do. Also, keep in mind, at least 2 FBI agents involved in the Delphi case had knowledge of various children exploitation of minors connecting to not only that large Olympic scandal with the Olympic trainer, but possibly others as well. I mean, is that just another coincidence? Were FBI agents involved in this CPS building and whatever nefarious and dark activities took place there? And is Bridge Guy a member of this? And if we're going down some of the darkest rabbit holes, here's another one for you. Is it possible government officials were involved in this ring, and if Bridge Guy was part of the ring, did they give him some kind of sense of security that he wouldn't be prosecuted for the crime? So do they have these meetings or occult ceremonies or whatever you want to call them? If they were meeting up at the building, did they tell Bridge Guy, go get some teens for us? And did he take them possibly back to the building or elsewhere to be used in ritual abuse or any of these very, very dark theories that are circulating on the internet? And is that why he was so brazen? Because he was thinking local officials might cover for him, and maybe they did. And what of the one law enforcement officer's suicide? Is that someone who was involved, or is it someone who found out about it, or is it not really a suicide at all? Again, there's so many unanswered questions in this case, and the more it goes unsolved, the darker and darker it seems to get. Because who's involved in this ring, if there is a ring, and are they staging at the CPS building, or did they in the past? I mean, this kind of just dark irony is just... I mean, the psychotic serial killers and those who exploit children, this is probably how they think. They see, oh, this is a child protective services building. Let's use it to do the opposite. I mean, these are some sick and depraved individuals. I mean, what other kind of individuals would be involved in murder and all of these crimes, obviously? But are they connected to some kind of official network? Now, furthermore, if this theory is true, do these officials, do they use some of these patsies, these low IQ locals? And do they tell them they won't be prosecuted even if they will? They're going to throw them to the wolves, and maybe even the ones that weren't involved, they're going to have them be patsies for other cases to cover for themselves, whatever the case may be. Are they using locals? Is this how the whole jig works? And if so, when will this jig be up? So he's returning. So the documents state he returned from Kline returned from Vegas on February 25th, 2017. The search warrant happens to be executed the exact time of his return. Now, what do we make of that? So does that mean definitively he was under surveillance? So a few curiosities from, I believe this is Kline's father's Facebook. He posted a photo of him and Kline at the Hoover Dam with the caption, "Can't wait to see K. Haven't seen him in 2 years. He's been at school." They claim at UNLV. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist. Okay, so Kline was not at UNLV. So the photo is one of their BS posts to muddy the waters. And again, these are people's write-ups and opinions here. Huh. I mean, there's some photo screen caps, and some of these dates are May 2017. So I don't know if that's reposting old photos, but I don't know. Or how often do they go to Vegas? That's another thing. Do they go to Vegas frequently? So also, some looking through the list have noticed that Kline's father's phone was not taken into custody. And you know what? People have brought this up in the past, but just real quick, going back to the CPS building, were there really no traffic cameras or security cameras from any businesses in the entire area where individuals and vehicles could be monitored coming and going the day of the murders, the day after? I mean, it's weird. I mean, I'm assuming they have all of this. I mean, you would think, in which case there's a lot of information. And even if not, again, I've talked about the Echelon spy satellite system. I mean, this thing has been up since the early 90s. By 2017, I mean, pretty much every populated inch of the Earth is monitored by satellite surveillance. So again, that's probably, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know how good the resolution would be to the point where you can make out individual human beings. But you can make out vehicles. You can make out vehicles, in which case you could track a lot. Also, Lee Kerr apparently has claimed that the suspect helped with the search party on either the 13th or the 14th. So people are asking if Kline helped with the search party. Now, of course, we do have an individual who many claim is a friend or a family member. He happens to look very similar to Kline. Maybe not exactly, but somewhat similar. It could just be another coincidence, of course. I mean, to match up their heights would be interesting. But, yeah, again, I do not claim anything is true or untrue on this podcast. We have a lot of Dunning-Kruger listeners who they don't understand what that means. No matter how many times I say it, they're so triggered, they hallucinate that I'm claiming anything is definitive. The entire motto of the Mindshock podcast is, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. I do not claim anybody is guilty or innocent. I do not even claim or hallucinate likelihoods or percentages of likelihoods. I mean, I spitball. I can say, you know, it's probably, if Kline is on multiple security cameras partying it up in Vegas on the day of the murder at the exact time with many witnesses, including security personnel at a major casino, then we can probably say he didn't do it. Now, I don't know if that exists. Again, this is why we are just theorizing here, but we don't know if Kline was part of the search party. We don't even know if Kline was in the area or he was in Vegas. Now, even if Kline was now let's say Kline and his father were walking the trails that day. So were, 80 other people? I don't know the exact count. Is it approximately 80? It was several dozen people out on the trails that day. Even if Kline and or his father were at the trails that day, that doesn't mean they're guilty of anything, of course. So, doesn't mean they're innocent either, but again, that does not prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in any way. Now, if Kline was the driver of the vehicle parked at the abandoned CPS building waiting for his father who was on the trails, what does that mean? Theoretically, is it possible that they were meeting with some other scummy, skeezy individual, possibly exchanging hard drives or such? I don't know how likely this is. These are people throwing out theories online. It seems like they probably would have done most things online. But I don't know. How do these guys work? If this was the late 90s, they would probably be meeting up. There's actually, for people that really want to see a dark movie, 8mm with Nicolas Cage. Even people who hate Nicolas Cage, they seem to give him credit for that movie. It's a really dark movie. It's Nick Cage and Joaquin Phoenix. 8mm, and there's a seedy underworld. It's about snuff films and a PI who investigates snuff films. And there's one scene which is kind of like an open market for these just really, really depraved individuals. And they're selling tapes of literally anything and everything imaginable. So, but again, in 2017, do criminals in the Delphi area involved in this, would they meet up? I don't know. But regardless whether they did or didn't, even if Kline and or his father were placed on or near the trails or the CPS building, that still technically wouldn't prove them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt either. So here's another post. I think it's important to take everything Lee Kerr says with a grain of salt. Assuming their intention is to help the case by releasing more info, they could simply be mistaken about certain aspects. That's a good point. And that's something the authority-worshipping cultists also never consider. Law enforcement isn't necessarily in on some big conspiracy and lying about things, but they're human beings. Human beings are fallible. They make mistakes. It's weird how so many authority-worshipping cultists can't even consider the possibility that not all people working in official capacities are 100% flawless about 100% of things. It's real weird. For instance, if Kline did participate in the search, how does law enforcement know? Is it because he's told them and his father has corroborated that story? Or do they have some other kind of evidence like cell phone data? Based on what very little I know about him, it doesn't really seem especially in character for him to want to participate in searches. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would engage in physical activity for a stranger one county over just out of the goodness of his heart. Maybe he did because he connected the dots and realized the girl he was catfishing had gone missing. Maybe I'm reading too much into things. And I guess if he did participate in the search, his alibi must be Peru and not Vegas if he claims to have searched for her on the 13th. That would be potentially suspicious. In particular, searching on the 14th, maybe not as much. Here's my personal idea. I think you'll have your doubts, and frankly, there's nothing wrong with that because this is purely speculative. Warning, graphic triggering descriptions ahead. Let's say Chadwell and Kegan Kline somehow became acquainted and are friends. Maybe they meet each other because they both have pit bulls. Maybe Chadwell identifies that they're both predators using one of his tactical predator identifying lines. Example of this kind of language abound on his social media. They hit it off and become instant BFFs or whatever. Kline reveals to Chadwell that he's been catfishing girls, in particular, Libby and Abby. Chadwell is like, that's cool and all, but wouldn't you rather be able to abuse these girls in real life rather than just by tricking them into sending you pics? Kline is maybe like, I don't know, yeah, but how? Chadwell is like, relax, I've done this before, it's easy. I mean, this is really, really dark stuff, too. Just even theorizing on these, how these predators would talk. So somehow they get the girls to agree to meet up at the High Bridge, or they stalk them all weekend. Finally, they get their chance. Chadwell plans to do the abduction part of it. Kline agrees to be the getaway driver and parks at the CPS building. By this point in time, Chadwell has his own place in Kokomo and is no longer living in Peru with his father. So Chadwell orders them down the hill, marches them across the river. Originally, I thought it was never Bridge Guy's plan to cross the creek, but maybe he's got waders on underneath or something, I don't know. Once they cross the creek, the girls at some point realize what's going on and fight back. This results in Chadwell killing both of them in anger. I don't understand Lee Kerr's descriptions of the signatures, but maybe the point was to destroy evidence and or make the murder appear to have been motivated by some other reason. And I'm going to interject here with another side theory. If the plan was never to kill anybody, then things got out of control, everything went wrong, was the cover-up to make it look occult or bizarre or just whatever madness in an attempt to cover up or make it look like something completely different to point away from the perpetrators, or just basically just for law enforcement confusion? Was that the goal? After the fact cover-up that was just so frantic that they made it look like 3 different serial killers, or they didn't know what they were doing. Now, I mean, maybe this is the time for another Mark Twain quote. The best swordsman in the world doesn't need to fear the second best swordsman in the world. No, the person for him to be afraid of is some ignorant antagonist who has never had a sword in his hand before. He doesn't do the thing he ought to do, and so the expert isn't prepared for him. He does the thing he ought not to do, and often it catches the expert out and ends him on the spot. So if this crime was perpetrated by bungling buffoon idiots, and they went so over the top in the staging, that it was so dumb and something like no intelligent criminal would ever do, that it threw the police off that much. And that's why the crime scene was so unusual. That's why there were so many random different signatures, and law enforcement didn't know what to make of it. And are Chadwell and Kline these types of bumbling buffoon morons who might do something like this? Again, I don't know. I am not claiming anything is true or untrue. I'm just going over theories because clearly this is an outlier case no matter what it turns out to be, just because of all these anomalies. So back to the post here. So I don't understand Lee Kerr's descriptions of the signatures, but maybe the point was to destroy evidence and or make the murder appear to have been motivated by some other reason. Or maybe Bridge Guy is just a crazy person, and when you're a crazy person, you do crazy things that don't make sense. And that's another excellent point. I mean, there's just so many people out there speculating, oh, well, why would they do this? That doesn't make sense. If you're a crazy, insane, psychopathic killer, why would you do something that does make sense? I mean, it's weird. I mean, maybe to rule it out or in is kind of, I don't know. It's weird. So-called true crime aficionados fall for these traps all the time, where they just say, "Oh, well, that wouldn't make sense." Well, again, in the mind of a deranged, loony killer, I mean, who knows? And are they also bumbling idiots who are also insane? And does that account for all the signatures? Again, I don't know. Continuing on here. So obviously, I don't have all the answers, and I'm just guessing based on rumors that aren't even confirmed. Other things I would really like to know: did Chadwell have a phone at that time? I would assume he did. What kind of a phone was it, and where was it pinging that day if he had one? On a similar note, what about Kline's father's phone? And while we're at it, if law enforcement was able to get a geofence warrant, were there phones of anyone who lived outside of Delphi that pinged near the High Bridge? Other questions. How certain is law enforcement that Kegan Kline's phone was at the CPS building? They think there was a vehicle there. How certain are they of that? I know there are blurry satellite images that could be a vehicle. It could also just be snow or just some kind of pixelation artifact, but the 11th and 12th of February both got above freezing. It seems pretty unlikely that there would still be snow in any area that would receive direct sunlight. Others have stated there could be surveillance footage of the CPS building from a nearby building. And of course, there's more than one satellite up there. This is something, again, I don't get. All of the NSA satellites out there, I mean, there's other countries that, I mean, wouldn't they want to assist, particularly if they have some kind of agreements with the U.S., just to provide even more surveillance footage? This is 2017 we're talking about. This is theoretically possible in the 90s, and maybe even before, but now we're talking about 2017. The CPS building appears very easy to break into. Someone posted a video of this. It's creepy AF on the inside. Maybe the plan was to take the girls there, or maybe it was just a place for Kegan Kline to hide out. Did law enforcement check it for evidence? I wouldn't be too surprised if this was a hub for illegal activity. There could have been DNA from a lot of people left there. It's possible Bridge Guy was squatting there. That's all the speculations and questions I can think of off the top of my head. Apologies for the unsolicited rant. No apologies necessary, but also that post did not get any response. Over a month ago. Yeah, really weird. Some people also look to Kegan Kline's music for clues. He's apparently a musician. He's got a number of tracks available on Spotify, Amazon, a couple other platforms. I mean, they're kind of generic sounding hip-hop. I mean, the only song I found that potentially is incredibly disturbing is one called Shame. Just a couple lyrics from this. I expletive you and all your cousins, 'cause you know I ain't got no shame. Plus, all you expletives look the same. I came stomping through the honky-tonk, a cowboy hat and boots, and my baby looking sexy with no teeth and Daisy Dukes. You already know how we ride, 'cause it's in my family roots. Nothing incredibly damning, but still kind of disturbing. But going back to the theory with that Chadwell and Kline might know each other as well as others, this is a post from a month ago, also on the Delphi Murder subreddit. Without doxing anyone, I will say I did some digging on Kegan Kline's Facebook friends and noticed at least one of them is friends with someone who is in Chadwell's family. Peru, Indiana, where Kline was arrested, and where Chadwell was from, are 30 minutes apart. I don't think it's far-fetched to consider that pedophiles living that close may have run into the same online or in-person circles. I don't exactly know what this all means, but when I noticed the Facebook friend connection between Chadwell's family and Kline's friends, it made me wonder if it's possible the two of them knew each other somehow. What do you think? And here's the other thing. If they're not criminal mastermind geniuses, wouldn't they have also friended each other? Or maybe not. Maybe even the dumb guys, they have some other means of communicating, so they wouldn't plaster their connections on any kind of main social media sites. I don't know. Or they have all these other fake accounts or whatever where they communicate. Wow, someone posted this. I think Kline's dad bought his pit tie from Chadwell when his dog had puppies. Just a wild thought, but a lot of coincidences are coming together. Another post, I've been thinking and saying this too, I can't shake the feeling that Chadwell is involved. The way Chadwell brutalized that little girl, who I think about almost every single day, is a very special brand of expletive up. It was so violent and brazen, I 100% believe that he clocked her in his neighborhood and had been thinking about taking her for weeks before he finally acted. He's not the run-of-the-mill pedo who preys on the kids closest to him like family members, which is what's most common among pedos. The act of a stranger abduction and sexual assault of a child is relatively rare in comparison. We hear about them and know about them and feel more common because they attract national attention, but it doesn't happen as much as people may feel it does. From what I understand, pedos acting in network or rings to share images and engage in sex trafficking amongst themselves, the notion that Kline and Chadwell knew each other is not as far-fetched at all in my mind, and the coincidence of Chadwell's arrest and now his guilty plea occurring so close to the new ISP press release is interesting to me. Chadwell could be bridge guy. Kline could be bridge guy. They both could have been there for all we know. Maybe they shared the Anthony Shots accounts and the police are trying to tie him to it. Or maybe Chadwell online activity led them back to Kline again. Whatever it is, I just can't shake the feeling that Kline and Chadwell are connected to each other and to Delphi Bridge Guy in some way. I've always had that feeling about Chadwell. The little hairs on the back of my neck stood up and I almost felt sick when I started looking into him. I get the same sense from Kline. There is something there. Also, the fact that ISP hasn't formally cleared him of involvement like they've done for other persons of interest. They've had plenty of time to clear him if he could be alibied or not a DNA match or what have you, but they haven't yet. It's not hard evidence of anything, but it's interesting and stands out to me. Another post, I think it's possible too, Kline being a lone catfish creep and then just jumping straight to murder seems slightly unlikely. But once you open to the possibility of a ring or even an online circle of people sharing images, for example, things could definitely become more broad. Anonymous usernames or leaking of info on the girls to other local predators is a possibility. Hell, that could be something you can buy on the dark web for all we know. Chadwell's violence did really strike me as quite fringe compared to the average pedophile, so I thought he was a pretty promising candidate. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It's kind of hard to not even think about other cases too, like the Amy Mihalovic case, still officially unsolved. If you haven't checked out the Mindshock series on Amy Mihalovic, make sure you check that out. There's speculation that there might be a ring involved there as well. Also, possibly with some kind of law enforcement ties. Is that why some of these cases remain unsolved? A very good post here also by someone else when I guess this is a local. While I was digging through both of their friends lists, I had several friends of friends in common. For example, I have at least 5 mutual friends of friends in common with Kline's dad. And probably more because he's friends with a lot of people. I live 90 minutes from Peru and have no ties to Peru, Kokomo, Logansport area. I just know quite a few people from around that area. So I wouldn't necessarily jump to any conclusions. A lot of people in that area likely work at Chrysler or one of the other manufacturing plants, either directly or indirectly. They went to Purdue, or they are like fourth cousins twice removed who met 20 years at a funeral. I mean, that is a good point. There's a lot of people on Facebook who are friends of friends, so that doesn't directly mean anything at all. Another interesting post here, I'm from around there, and them being within 30 minutes of each other could mean they are best buds, or never met. I drove almost that far to high school every day. My point is that distance is funny in rural type areas, so it's very possible. Another good point there. So here's a great post from Agent 847. Lowlifes, no lowlifes. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if there was some connection, but I'm not betting the farm on it either. This latest release has the whole Delphi interested community in a lather, but it's like every other thing law enforcement has done. It's vague and it leaves more questions than answers. Just the fact that Kegan Anthony Kline was free for 3 years after having possessed all of this child exploitation material is deeply alarming. I keep saying it, but there's something very off about the fact that law enforcement has known this guy since the first days of the investigation and has said nothing. They've had every resource available to track down his associates, but they're just now asking for people to come forward who talk to Anthony Shots. The one thing I keep coming back to is maybe a tip came in from someone who had an online chat with this guy, and he revealed he knew some detail that had never been made public, and what was once thought to be an unrelated pervert suddenly has law enforcement locked in on someone behind this identity. It may be Kegan Kline or someone else entirely. Could that be Chadwell? Dunno. Okay, here's another good point though. Is it possible that Kline, Chadwell, whoever, but mainly Kline we're talking about here, is it possible he interacted with Bridge Guy online and Bridge Guy mentioned something that had not been made public, and that's what initiated all of the new interest? Or somehow Kline knew Bridge Guy either in real life or not and knew some detail and he was bragging about it to somebody else in this ring. Is it possible that on these online rings there are individuals who draw the line at murder? They don't condone any actual murder. So even though they're these depraved individuals, they would report Kline or someone else if they thought they were involved with actual murder. But clearly there was some kind of impetus to release this information, possibly that first page article in the newspaper regarding law enforcement in Delphi, but maybe not. Maybe it could have been something else. Another good post here. Does anyone know if the search warrant was prompted by the release of the first still image and audio that ISP released? Did that generate a tip that led them to Kline the first time? It sounded like, from the PC affidavit, that the FBI led them to Kegan Kline. I just wish they had held that picture and audio until after they executed the search warrant. I feel like the picture is what panicked Kline to reset one of his phones. Then, after they took him for questioning, he came home and, quote, found, end quote, his iPhone, the ones he'd been deleting things on already that same morning before the warrant was executed, and started deleting and uninstalling a bunch of stuff. I'm worried they sort of expletive the bed on that one. Although the counterpoint is supposedly they can still retrieve that information. Again, unless Kline is some kind of technical genius, and even if he is, supposedly they can still recover all that information. I don't know. Another interesting post here by Into the Soil. There have been coincidental connections between murderers before that had absolutely no bearing on the crimes they committed. Incredibly interesting either way, but I am far from ready to start assuming Kline and Chadwell had any actual relationship at this point. Yeah, that's a great point as well. Why wouldn't murderers be able to know each other and not know that they are murderers? Out of all the murderers in the history of the world, or even in the United States throughout all time, I mean, there's got to be a certain percentage of murderers who happen to know each other on some level that did not commit crimes together or possibly even know of each other's crimes. So, an interesting post discovered here by Professional Emu. Seems like Chadwell and Kline had the same barber. Kline promoted the shop in November 2019 on Facebook, and Chadwell tagged him in March/April this year. Huh. Wow, there's a lot of astute researchers out there. I mean, again, how many barbers could there possibly be within that certain area? So again, obviously that's not damning proof in any way, but it's something. It's more than zero. So another write-up here on the points of possible connection. So regarding Chadwell and the Delphi murders. So Chadwell lives in close proximity to Delphi. The crime he committed against the 9-year-old girl. His voice, gait, and appearance align with Bridge Guy. The hat Bridge Guy is wearing, people have speculated, is a specific hat that welders wear. Chadwell seems to have welding experience. His social media had a photo of a high bridge, similar to Delphi's. His Facebook profile went dark around the time of the Delphi murders, and he was someone who posted almost daily. He has photos of himself camping and being outdoors often, something that people speculate Bridge Guy would be into. He had a lot of weird posts and TikToks talking about only liking women his own age, shaming women for dancing or twerking. Overall, just weird stuff that now seems even creepier considering he was arrested for child abuse. And, of course, his tattoo of the girl with blood tears running out of her eyes on his arm, people have speculated looks eerily similar to Libby. And if you haven't checked out the Chadwell episode on the Mindshock podcast, check that out. I mean, very disturbing stuff. Again, nothing 100% damning, but just disturbing stuff. Okay, so another interesting post with a variation on the theory, but here's the gist. This is by That's the username. If Kline is actually involved in the crime, I believe this happened. I think it's likely Chadwell and him were in touch and shared photos, possibly accounts, grooming techniques with each other, and planned the crime together. I just think that it didn't go as planned, and only one of them was on the bridge and killed the girls. The other one was supposed to see the girls in the car or a second location, or at the very least some images of the crime. The murders were supposed to happen later and in another location, but the girls didn't cooperate as they should have, and it was too risky for Bridge Guy to go as planned. Maybe he thought one of the girls would run away. That is, if Kline is directly involved in this. Otherwise, I believe Bridge Guy acted by himself. I have to say, though, I generally don't believe Bridge Guy is Kline, and I still lean towards Chadwell. I know there's way more stuff that makes Kline the suspect, but I really don't see Bridge Guy in him. So again, just a random post. I will add this, though. I always mention this. Everybody seems to forget. The thermal imaging drone did not pick up bodies. Okay, it was flown that afternoon. So is it possible there was a second location? Again, rumors early on, again, looking through a lot of cases, in a good percentage of cases, early rumors turned out to be true. I mean, a lot of cases have this roller coaster effect. So the crime occurs, there's a whole bunch of rumors, then they're all dismissed and ruled out. Then X amount of time later, it turns out they were true or partially true. Then there's the backtracking. Obviously, that's not all cases. I'm not even going to say that's the majority of cases. But it's in a certain percentage. It's in a non-minuscule percentage of cases where early rumors turn out to be true. So if they were taken elsewhere, a barn or wherever, a shed, and is it possible there were two or more perpetrators? So if there's a ring involved, I mean, that opens the door to a lot of stuff. If there's no ring and it's just these two scumbags, possibly three, maybe even four, I guess, but they're acting not with any kind of larger rings with some people in official capacities. So is it possible they were taken, then returned to muddy the waters, or did a different individual return them? So let's say I don't know if there's a connection between Kline, Chadwell, and Ron Logan. If there's a third individual involved and he knew about Ron Logan's land, maybe had some kind of an argument with Ron Logan or just didn't like Ron Logan and wanted to frame him, maybe the two guys that were the more complicit, the two guys that did the murders, they wanted nothing to do with this. But the third guy dumped the bodies on Logan's land to frame Logan if he thought it was a good idea, or if only two of them, Chadwell or Kline, one of them might have thought it was a good idea to frame Logan and cause a lot of confusion because if the girls did go with them, either kidnapped or otherwise, yeah, I mean, that opens the door. I don't think the thermal imaging drone can be dismissed. Again, I am not alleging the bodies weren't there. There's just so many anomalies on how they weren't found. Supposedly the area was searched that afternoon and the bodies weren't there. Again, this is all second, third-hand accounts of searchers. I'm not alleging that it 100% happened, of course, because if the bodies were there, how could they be searched and they not be there? Obviously, this would have to involve the bodies not being there if those accounts are true. Okay, we're going to major Mindshock territory now. So let's go down another rabbit hole here. Here's a post by T.H. Ferber. I think some folks are going to be surprised to find out that Kline is or was friends with Garrett Kirts. Everything is going to make sense then. This is looking like a catfish situation that led to murder. Not a coincidence that almost 2 years later, Kirts catfishes Ray Hainish and murders him. The worst part of that is he got away with it. Hainish and his family deserve justice too. So again, Kirts we have discussed in the past, and currently, Gareth Kirts was sentenced 55 years for Nicole Bowen's murder. And I've gone over this before. Kirts actually pleaded guilty to this. So let's go over this Kirts situation again. This is an article from Journal and Courier. Torture, murder of WL woman followed fear. She snitched on meth operation, killer says. This is by Dave Bangert, September 4th, 2020. Garrett Kirts, a 22-year-old Lebanon man accused in the 2019 torture and murder of Nicole Bowen, admitted Friday to a judge that he and two others conspired to kill the West Lafayette mother of two because they were sure she was going to turn them in for cooking methamphetamine. Kirts said he and Ashley Garth, a Delphi woman also charged with murder, and a friend named Jason Palladino, a white county man, not Caucasian County, a white county man, the name of the county is White County, who prosecutors have not charged but say remains a person of interest, conspired to get Bowen, 30, to a trailer north of Ketland on the night of March 29, 2019. Kirts told Newton Superior Judge Daniel Moulter on Friday that everyone in the trailer knew what was going to happen when he brought Bowen there, presumably for a confrontation between his former and current girlfriends. Speaking so quickly in court that Moulter asked him to slow down, Kirts said that after Garth got into a fist fight with Bowen that night, Kirts stepped in and subdued Bowen with a chokehold before he and Garth teamed up to strangle her. She snitched on me, Kirts told Newton Superior Judge Daniel Moulter. It was selfish, but... On Friday, Kirts pleaded guilty to murder in a deal that essentially took the chance of life without parole off the table. Kirts had been scheduled for trial later in September. Moulter sent a sentencing date in January 2021, but Jeff Drinsky, Newton County prosecutor, said the terms of the plea deal call for 55 years in prison. The murder charge, had the case gone to trial, would have carried up to 65 years in prison. Drinsky has filed for life without parole in the case, saying that there were elements of torture in Bowen's death. Before Kirts, shackled and dressed in Newton County Jail orange jumpsuit, left the courtroom, Drinsky asked Cheryl Samuels, Bowen's mother, if she agreed with the terms of the plea. Samuels, wearing a turquoise t-shirt emblazoned with Justice for Nicole on the front, nodded. "I'm ready for it to be over," Samuels said later, parked in the Newton County Courthouse Square, ready to make the 45-minute drive back to her home in Battle Ground. Since initial charges were filed against Kirts and 4 others in connection with the daughter's death, she and family members, always dressed in the t-shirts of Bowen's favorite color, hadn't missed what turned out to be more than a dozen court hearings. "I'm just ready for it to all be over," Samuels repeated. "We're accepting of the plea, let's put it that way." The other 4 people accused of playing roles in the Harrison High School graduate's death remain in custody as of Friday, according to jail records. Court documents offered more background to Kirts' testimony Friday. Documents detail how Kirts told police he drove Bowen to Jasmine Parker's trailer on Newton County Road, a few miles north of Ketland, the night of March 29th. Kirts told police that he knew Garth, his girlfriend at the time, was there. Kirts also told police he wanted the women to hash it out or fight it out. According to documents filed December 2019 with her murder charge, after DNA evidence suggested she played a larger role in the crime beyond instigating a fight, Garth told police that she considered Bowen a rival and an enemy because she was the other woman in Kirts' life. Kirts told police that Bowen was reluctant to go into the trailer. At some point while inside, Garth and Bowen got into it. As they fought, Kirts told police he stepped in. Court documents claim Kirts told police that he and Garth then strangled Bowen before wrapping her in a blanket. Kirts said he enlisted help and drove her into rural Newton County. Bowen's body was found by a property owner the following afternoon in a storage trailer that had been converted into a hunting shack in a spot near Newton County Road. And, okay. Wow. Okay, we have another shack reference here. Drinsky and Garth had a plea. Drinsky said Garth has a plea agreement pending that would drop the murder charge for a felony charge of assisting a criminal. Drinsky said that charge carries a maximum of 6 years in prison. He said Garth is scheduled to take a polygraph test next week, leading up to her next court date, October 21st. 3 other people have been charged in connection with Bowen's death. Talitha Beckley, 38-year-old Monticello woman who prosecutors say was in the trailer home that night, and Christopher Mathis, a 28-year-old Kentland man who was recruited to help Kirts hide Bowen's body. have been charged with assisting a criminal level 5 felony that carries possible prison sentences of 1 to 6 years. Mathis also was charged with obstruction of justice. Mathis, who Drinsky said is also up for a polygraph test next week, has a pending plea deal and is scheduled for sentencing October 23rd. Beckley has asked for a trial on her charges. Beckley's next court appearance is scheduled for a hearing October 19th. Parker, 35, pleaded guilty October 2019 to assisting a criminal after she admitted that she was in her home that night, but had hidden in another room when Bowen was killed. The plea agreement came with a 1-year prison sentence on a charge that carries a sentence of 1 to 6 years, along with 4 years for being a habitual offender. Kirts' claim that Palladino was involved was the first in public in the case. Drinsky said Palladino was not in the trailer that night. He said the only other detail he could offer was that the case is still under investigation. Efforts to reach Palladino were not immediately successful Friday. Still unresolved is Kirts' possible involvement in the March 2019 death of Ray Hanish, a 49-year-old man found dead in his Reynolds home. The White County coroner ruled the death a homicide caused by asphyxia due to ligature strangulation. The details in Hanish's death remain sketchy in public view, and his family has pushed for explanations, including attending many of the Newton County hearings tied to Bowen's murder. In a socially distanced courtroom Friday, Hanish's mother and sisters did not attend. December 2019, White County prosecutor Bob Guy, what a name, confirmed to the JNC that he was waiting for Kirts' case in Newton County to wrap up before filing charges connected to Hanish's death in Reynolds. Guy declined at the time to offer more details. He said investigators did not believe Hanish's death was murder. He wouldn't commit to whether a criminal act led to Hanish's death, whatever that means. Okay, so here's an updated article from Journal and Courier, updated December 28th, 2019. Suspect in Kentland torture murder case tied to strangulation death weeks earlier, 2 counties away. Dave Bangert. Family of Ray Hanish first were told he died of natural causes. The death certificate now says homicide. Prosecutor says Garrett Kirts, suspect in Nicole Bowen's murder, is connected in some way. The November morning, a bailiff escorted Garrett Kirts, a Lebanon 21-year-old shackled and dressed in an orange jumpsuit, into Newton Superior Court. Dottie Hoagland Hanish had squeezed into one of the 2 rows of the gallery, already filled with more than a dozen people in light blue t-shirts printed with a hashtag, Justice for Nicole. Hoagland Hanish was a mismatch in a white t-shirt with big block rainbow letters. She'd made the 2-hour-plus drive from Warsaw with her daughter Roxanne Collins, who had come from her home in North Carolina, there in an identical white t-shirt, knowing she'd have to explain the message across her chest, justice for Ray, and what it had to do with a murder case on another side of Indiana in another time zone. When her son, Ray Hanish, died in March at the age of 49, his body was found in a Reynolds duplex days later. There were no accounts in a newspaper in or around the White County town 25 miles north of Lafayette. Nothing on TV either. Nothing much on social media even. The initial word she received was that Hanish, a nurse at a nursing home in Monticello, had died of natural causes. It didn't add up, Hoagland Hanish said. Months later, in September, Ray Hanish's death certificate was released by the White County coroner. Under the manner of death section, the coroner put a check mark next to homicide. The cause of death, asphyxia due to ligature strangulation. The how and why are still sketchy from official sources. Sergeant Kim Riley, a spokesman for the Indiana State Police post in Lafayette, said results of an ISP investigation into Hanish's death were turned over to the White County prosecutor. Beyond that, Riley said he wasn't in a position to share details of what police suspect happened to Ray Hanish. What the family knows from the prosecutor is that Kirts, charged in Newton County, jailed and awaiting a trial in connection with the strangulation death of Nicole Bowen, a West Lafayette mother of 2 found dead in late March a few miles from Kentland, was somehow tied to Ray Hanish's death as well. So Hoagland Hanish was there in the second-floor courtroom of the Newton County Courthouse among Bowen's friends and family, saying she'd keep showing up for court dates in another case to await on what she wants as spelled out on her custom-made t-shirt. Somebody needs to see that justice is done for my son, Hoagland Hanish said. I guess it'll have to be me. The connection? The timeline. White County prosecutor Bob Guy confirmed to the JNC that he's waiting for Kirts' trial to wrap up in Newton County before filing any charges connected to Ray Hanish's death in Reynolds. He declined to give many details other than to say that witnesses tied to the Newton County death of Nicole Bowen have cooperated in the White County investigation too. His case will play a major role in what we do over here, Guy said. We believe we have a pretty good picture of what took place in White County, Guy said. We do not have a murder, I will say that. If there is a criminal act, it would be a much lower level. I'm not even saying there was a criminal act. We're, in a sense, playing a wait-and-see game. Cody Spear, Kirts' attorney in Newton County murder case, did not immediately respond to calls for comment. Hoagland Hanish said Guy has been in touch and has told them whatever happened, Kirts claimed it was an accident. The rest, she and her daughters, Collins and Cher First Prentice, have tried to piece together the best they can. Hoagland Hanish described her son as a mama's boy, staying in touch 3 or 4 times a week and attentive to her calls and texts from the other side of the state. She said her son was someone who wanted to help others even when she didn't think it was the greatest idea. That was the case in December 2018 when Ray Hanish told her about taking in a couple who had been living in a van, feeding them, and allowing them a place to sleep and shower. I saw Ray posting pictures of these meals that could feed a family way more than he could eat, Hoagland Hanish said. I told Ray, don't get involved, be careful. But I knew his heart. That's just what he did. Hoagland Hanish said her son never told her who the couple was, but she said he told her that the man had expressed interest in a relationship. Hoagland Hanish said Ray was gay, but he had told her that at nearly 50 years old, he wasn't going to get involved with someone who was in his early 20s. The last time Hoagland Hanish heard from her son was on March 12th. They texted back and forth as she rode home with Collins from a dog show in Louisville. Ray Hanish had asked her if they had fun at the show and told her that he'd been on a spring cleaning jag at his house. She said her daughter, First Prentice, traded texts with her son a few hours later, early in the overnight hours of March 13th, when both couldn't sleep. Hoagland Hanish said texts she sent on March 13th and again on March 14th went unanswered, which she said she found odd. She said a nephew who lived in Valparaiso but worked in Lafayette had stopped in Reynolds to see Ray Hanish around 4:30 p.m., March 13th, but her son's Pontiac G6 wasn't there, so the nephew drove home. When 3 more days passed with no answer from her son, Hoagland Hanish called on March 16th to the nursing home where Ray Hanish worked weekend shifts, hoping to catch him there. She was told he didn't show up for his shift. I immediately knew something was seriously wrong, Hoagland Hanish said. Ray was never somebody who missed work. She said she filed a report of a possible missing person with Indiana State Police that day. On March 19th, a deputy with the Kosciuszko County Sheriff's Office came to her home and told her that her son had been found dead in his home in Reynolds. Collins said his car was gone, recovered later in Lafayette. So was his cell phone, wallet, and credit cards. Police later tracked down a TV that had been taken and identified with a receipt the family found in Ray Hanish's home. She said that when the family was allowed in her brother's home, the place was filled with cigarette butts, Solo cups, and generally trashed. Details still sketchy. Collins said the family still doesn't know where her brother was found in the home, who was there when he died, or why his face and upper body were so bruised that they couldn't have an open casket during his viewing and funeral on March 23rd in his hometown of Hebron in northern Indiana. The coroner's report that came months later that Ray Hanish died by ligature strangulation was kind of like a gut punch, Collins said. I knew from the get-go that something happened to my brother, that this natural causes was total BS, Collins said. I have some scenarios in my mind. The one thing that sticks in my head is that he's getting swept under the rug because he was gay and that maybe that was part of what happened. Whatever happened, someone deserves to pay. The Nicole Bowen case. While law enforcement has been tight with what they know in White County, charges filed in Newton County lay out what police and prosecutors believed Kirts did to Nicole Bowen 2 weeks later, a few months north of Kentland. According to court documents, Kirts told police he drove Bowen to a trailer home on March 29th where he planned to pit Bowen, 30, against his girlfriend Ashley Garth, a 27-year-old Delphi woman who told police she'd considered Bowen a rival and an enemy because she was the other woman in Kurtz's life. Kirts told police that he wanted Garth and Bowen to hash it out or fight it out that night in his trailer home, according to a probable cause affidavit filed with his murder charges. It seems like he's into older women and much older men regarding Gareth Kirts, if all of this information is to be believed. According to court documents, Kirts jumped into the fray, putting Bowen in a chokehold until she passed out. Investigators say Kirts wrapped a scarf and an extension cord around her neck so tightly that the end of the extension cord broke because he did not want Nicole to wake up. After wrapping Bowen's body in a blanket and packing tape, Kirts told investigators he recruited help from Christopher Mathis, a Kentland man, to dump her body. On December 18th, Newton County prosecutor Jeff Drinsky upped Garth's charges from assisting a criminal to murder and conspiracy to commit murder when DNA evidence suggested she played a bigger role than first told. According to court documents filed that day, Kirts said Garth tied a knot in the extension cord. "I know you're going to need this," she told him, and her fingerprints were found on the roll of tape used that night. Drinsky said a plea deal offered to Kirts, one that Bowen's family members were told included a 45-year prison sentence, was taken off the table. Drinsky said he plans to go for life without parole, claiming Kirts tortured Bowen. Kirts is expected back in court January 6th to set a trial date. Garth is expected in court again January as well to deal with the new charges. 3 others, including Mathis, have been charged or sentenced in connection with assisting Kirts in Bowen's death. In Carroll County, another case. Kirts also faces an unresolved case in Carroll County from 2019. There he was charged with strangulation, accused of ambushing Garth and choking her until she passed out several times on January 20th at her home near Delphi. According to court documents, in the probable cause affidavit filed with the charges, Garth told police that Kirts told her that he was not kidding about killing her, referencing earlier messages he had sent her. The court documents also say Kirts denied Garth's version of the story, telling police that he'd been defending himself when she got mad and attacked him when he tried to borrow her cell phone. That case has its next hearing in February, according to Carroll County court records. That is kind of weird, though. So these two criminals who are being charged with killing another human being, one of them also has charges against the other. Man, this is one warped and twisted case. As for Ray Hanish's case, Guy said the Newton County case against Kirts has to come first. Obviously, you'd have to decide the value of charging someone and bringing them back over if that person in fact received a larger sentence, a more lengthy sentence in another county, Guy said. Obviously, the family was very concerned about what had taken place, as they should have been, Guy said, and we've shared with them as much as we possibly could and answered their questions to this point. Everyone wants justice for their family member if there's been a criminal act. I told them we'd make a decision as soon as we could. Colin said she wants to see charges in her brother's death. I'm not stopping until we find out what happened to Ray, Colin said. Somebody did my brother wrong. Right now, we're supporting Nicole's family. It's all we can really do. Hoagland Hanish said she checks up on the theories about her son's death on the Facebook group called Justice for Ray Hanish, even though it isn't easy to read. It's like somebody sticking me with a pin. That's how it is reading about my son's death day after day. She said about questions about whether there was something sexual in nature in Ray Hanish's death or that he might have been hanging around the wrong people. Even if he was, she said, he doesn't deserve to die from it. Hoagland Hanish said she'll keep making the drive to Kentland whenever Kurtz's case is on the docket. She said she'll be there for the trial, too, when that happens. I'll be in that t-shirt, Hoagland Hanish said. Ray deserves justice, too, you know. So, that is the background on Kirts. He's been associated with the Delphi case as well on numerous occasions. I've gone over him in the past. So let's look at his MO here. So here's yet another post from the Libby and Abby subreddit by an astute researcher, big statistician. Garrett Kirts used a fake Grindr account to meet up with Ray Hanish, then killed him and staged the scene. Though the motive is not clear, it was very calculated and targeted. Is this a new method among those involved in drugs to reach a specific individual for all sorts of different motives? So here is yet another Mindshock by posters since deleted. There was a Facebook post shared by Garrett Kirts in January 2017 claiming that law enforcement contacted him about chatting with a 14-year-old. Garrett thought it was funny, using a laughing emoji, implying they were barking up the wrong tree. He appears to have preferred women and men, slightly older than himself, but maybe law enforcement was already trying to ID catfish accounts that were targeting minors prior to the Abby and Libby murders. Now, this is curious as well. So this is the month prior to the murders, and they're contacting Garrett Kirts regarding some possible catfishing activity. Now, this just gets weirder and weirder, because if they already had investigations, is that why FBI was already there in the area investigating? They were already there by the time of the murders. Now, for those that believe that Kirts was directly involved, the counterpoints here by posters are that he left his DNA all over Nicole, and he was found out just days later. There's no way he's smart enough to do Delphi and not leave any evidence pointing directly to him. Now, again, that doesn't mean he doesn't know other individuals who might have been involved. Okay, so let's examine the case against Garrett Kirts now. So this is from a year ago on the Libby and Abby subreddit, more astute researchers going through the evidence. Now, on paper, it would seem that Kirts should be written off, but we're going to go over some mind-shocking information here, including him knowing, at least to some degree, the German family. So let's start off here. This is a post by DD Cups 1 year ago. What is the case against Garrett Kirts? Just posting an open question, I'm a little surprised here that Garrett Kirts isn't being spoken about with higher intensity as the chief suspect in this crime. At least someone in his crew. What is the case against? Because the case for is quite compelling. He looks like both sketches, fits the body image of Bridge Guy, has reddish brown hair, voice as alike as any. He is a murderer. We know of one, and he has admitted to at least one more. He is young, but a crackhead, so kind of looks older. Language here. Outdoorsman. His Facebook is littered with cowboy stuff and usual rural America ranting about gun love and Second Amendment rights. Has confirmed to have spent considerable time on Ron Logan's property. Now, this is the one that really makes me unable to write him off completely. Perhaps he knows individuals, perhaps he knows who did it. I don't know. But that's just a curiosity. I mean, how many individuals that end up being murderers are just hang out on Ron Logan's property? I mean, that's just a curious question. So this is a fact from his Facebook posts and the interview where he stated he spent time there and knows about the shallow sand banks. A multi-murderer knows this secret location. Are we seriously suggesting small-town Delphi has two unrelated serial killers knowing that secret out-of-the-way riverbank? It's hard enough to find a Delphi connection, yet we have a connection to the same spot and a killer off his head on drugs. Police go in a different direction to a younger suspect 2.5 weeks after Garrett is known to authorities to the Bowen murder. Sketch 2 is also a dead ringer for his accomplice. Just a rumor, but apparently he didn't leave the house for 5 days around the killings. His Facebook photos are dark between January and June 2017. Before and after, he is a very frequent Facebook poster and photo uploader. As stated in an audio interview posted here, police have tried to cut a plea deal with him over the murders, and he failed a polygraph. When asked if he killed the girls, his response was, "There's no evidence that says that. or words to that effect. That, to me, is a weird response over, no, I'm not a child killer. Someone theorized he may have just wanted to kidnap or rob them. Then when he realized he vaguely knew the girls, he panicked and killed them. Sounds plausible. Now, wow, because here on Mindshock, I mean, we go over almost pretty much every theory out there. We actually have not gone over the theory that this was supposed to be a stranger crime, but when the perpetrator actually realized he might have known one or both of the girls, now he might have felt he had to kill them in order to not be turned in, whereas he thought he might have been targeting random people on the trails. Again, I'm not saying that theory is more or less likely than any other, but it's one that hasn't really been discussed, because the two that are discussed are that the killer knew them, catfish type situation, or stranger crime, the killer did not know them. But what if it was intended to be a stranger crime, but it turned out that the perpetrator did know one or both of them? Anyway, finishing up the post here, some of that stuff is very telling. A serial killer that looks like the sketch has spent time on Ron Logan's property in particular. Come on, how is he not being scrutinized the way Daniel Nations was? What am I missing? A post here, of course he's the most viable suspect by far. It's not even close. I'm convinced they just don't have usable DNA and he won't confess. Every observation you've made, especially the accomplice's resemblance to the second sketch, has also come to my mind when considering Kirts. I think the second sketch unveil was a play by law enforcement to scare the accomplice in the Bowen murders into flipping on Kirts. Until they charge someone else, Kirts is the bridge killer as far as I'm concerned. Another post by poster since deleted. I think you have made all good points. Watching his jail videos, he just didn't strike me as bridge guy, but I could be completely wrong. I would not be surprised if it turned out that he had knowledge or was involved. The other thing I wonder about is his girlfriend. She kind of looks the most like bridge guy out of all of them. I could swear I saw somewhere that his girlfriend had some kind of relationship to one of the girl's parents, but I don't know where I saw it. I also thought that in one of the jail videos he said his girlfriend could look mannish, if that is a word. A response here by Catch Me Trolls. Libby's father, Derek German, was a cooperating witness against Ashley Garth just prior to the double slaying. Garth, of course, Kurtz's girlfriend. Derek German's testimony aided in Ashley Garth losing custody of her child. Derek German cooperated with the feds to avoid jail for a drug-related offense. So this is curious. We haven't specifically examined this in relations to Kirts. So let's look at this in context here. Now, we really don't know why Kirts is so intimately familiar with Ron Logan's property, but he seems to be. No one knows why, but he spends a lot of time, or enough time, on Ron Logan's land. Now, is Ron Logan involved in some kind of a drug ring or something else far more sinister, and he knows Kirts, and this was all planned? But why would Kirts... It doesn't sound like it. It almost sounds like if they did have a falling out, who was the one that burglarized the Logan home? Because if that was Kirts, and he has a grudge against Logan, he's familiar with Logan's property. Now, Derek German testified against Kurtz's girlfriend. She loses custody of her child. Is this retaliatory? I mean, the motive is there. Obviously, that doesn't mean he was responsible in any way. But it's kind of hard to argue against the motive, because German... If this is all true that Catch Me Trolls has reported, I mean, other people have reported this as well, that Derek German did testify, and if this is all true regarding Ashley Garth losing custody being testified against by Derek German, now you have Garrett Kirts, a known murderer, a known murderer, multiple offender, intimately familiar with Ron Logan's land, who had his girlfriend lose custody of a child because of Derek German. I mean, I don't know. What do people make of the theory that Bridge Guy is a female? Would she... and going back to the theory that Bridge Guy had an old man mask on, what do we make of all that? Another astute post here by Gypsy Jenna. I would be thrilled if it were him, since he's been incarcerated for a while, regarding Garrett Kirts. I do agree there are some interesting points about him, particularly his knowledge of the area. When it comes to his intelligence is where I'm less optimistic he could be the perp. I can't help but think that if he did it, someone would have spoken out already. There's no way he would have kept a secret. I'm not saying that whoever did this is some sort of evil mastermind genius, but I think there's an elevated level of sophistication that Kirts doesn't exhibit to me. The rebuttal post here, if Abby and Libby were killed to silence people, then others wouldn't be willing to say anything, especially for a nominal sum of money. The reward isn't really that small, but also not enough to really change one's identity and totally start over somewhere else. They would probably be thinking, is it worth it to also risk my life with meth addicts and a gang to come forward about this crime? Is the reward enough so that I could really not be found out after giving info testifying against them? I think law enforcement should be talking about the witness protection program publicly regarding this case, and it's curious that they never have. A post by True Crime Me. I think motive is a good case. Kirts killed those he would benefit from killing. He killed people he knew. Bridge Guy seemingly has a different motive. Either thrill kill or sexual killer, but not a kill for convenience. Secondly, the type of killer Kirts was. He didn't independently to kill anyone, but rather had confidence in killing with pack mentality. Bridge Guy seemed very motivated, determined, and very alone. How do we know he was alone? I trust law enforcement on that one. They are probably saying that because of the audio they have, there was only 3 voices. While it would be easy to pick Kirts and wipe our hands of it all and praise we got the one and only baddie, I just genuinely think he isn't involved, and any little hints and tips he gives is because he wants the attention. I don't think Bridge Guy wants the attention. I also don't think Bridge Guy is as stupid as Garrett Kirts seems to be. He's a blabbermouth. Bridge Guy has kept his secret very well and left nothing behind so far. Honestly, I'll hold up my hands and say my armchair opinion was dumb if it turns out to be him, but I really just think people just don't want to consider Delphi can produce any, never mind multiple murderers. Some other investigators, some other online researchers here have found out links with old MySpace connections between Ashley Garth and Derek German. The people he named as friends associates of Ashley Garth weren't just made up, which actually makes me think that if he didn't do it, what he heard about it was very possibly true. Nicole Bowen was allegedly killed because of her knowledge of their meth dealing, and it's not a stretch to me that they may have also killed Abby and Libby to ensure silence of a family member. I'm saying that because I agree with the original poster that it's curious that people are so quick to rule out everything Garrett Kirts so easily. Another post here by Only Management. Listen to Open Secrets Delphi. The videos are all short because they are phone calls Kirts made from prison to the person who owns the site. He's vulgar, so you don't want to watch too much. Every other word is the F word. He is happy to trash Ashley Garth, says she's a liar and a manipulator. He protests too loudly on these videos that law enforcement is trying to pin the Delphi murders on him. Watch the prison call with Mathis, who helped him dispose of Nicole's body. He wants to talk, but he can't because Kirts threatened his 3 daughters. The mothers of his children have all purchased weapons and obtained concealed carry permits. The guy is frantic about what may happen to them. You will note that Kirts is asked several times if he knows the Germans. He says no, but later he says he dated and did drugs with Libby's cousin. If she did recognize him, that would be why. There is also a video with Ed Bounds and Open Secrets in which Ed said he was in Delphi talking to locals and he was told Garth had an apartment very close to the bridge and Kirts was staying there at the time of the murders. He brings up a point from Kirts' confession regarding Bowen that he put her body in that shipping container so she would be found. He wanted her body to be found. Same with Abby and Libby. He laid them out in a way that he wanted them to be found. Also, in all the jailhouse calls, he is spitting nonstop. Bridge guy was spitting. He tells the interviewer he has no hair, sketch can't be him. He had curly hair and cut it off after the sketch came out. Further, the shipping crate he placed Bowen in looks like a shack, and that is why the police referenced the shack. They wanted Kirts to know they were talking to him. I think Kirts' mother knows all. Crack her and the case is solved. Kirts is very explosive and you can see that in all of the videos. He even strangled Garth one night until she blacked out. Did it more than once that night. He did that to a person he claimed to love every day on Facebook. He is my POI of choice. Interesting points there. I mean, if there is a connection with a cousin of the German family, I believe other people said that he liked photos that someone in the German family was posting on Facebook as well. So he might have connections to the German family. And a few more rumors here. Again, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. If this is all true, it would be very, very damning and possibly also explain his intimate knowledge of the Logan property. But someone stated here he used to go to church. He's written prayers on his Facebook feed, aligns with the conscience comment from Carter. So, you know what? Is it possible that Carter and the law enforcement thought it was Kirts, so they were talking to him at some of the press conferences? But it's not him, but they thought it was. Does that explain some of these comments? Supposedly, Kirts worked on the Mears property, right next to the bridge there. And supposedly the Mears have denied that, but here's the thing. Would they deny it? Yet another interesting post here from the profile guy. Kirts' colleagues are as interesting as anything. Mathis wasn't there but heard from Kurt, who was there because he knows his DNA and fingerprints are not there. He knows the murder weapon. Mathis is a mid-level drug dealer. Not the manufacturer, but close. He is trusted within the group. Mathis has been around a bit, although he made a mistake that might have labeled him an informant. I don't think Mathis was called for until the Bowen's body was removed. Jasmine Parker. If Nicole was murdered for being a snitch, then most likely Parker catfished her. Probably through fear, and she doesn't even know it. Jasmine lived in the same town as Nicole Bowen. Ashley Garth is from Delphi. She is the girlfriend, but no love rivalry existed. They could hardly say it was an ordered and planned hit. Just a theory. So, further analysis here from interviews with Garrett Kirts on Open Secrets, and there are YouTube videos of all of this. A write-up by Mom Anan. He claims he brought Nicole over to Jasmine Parker's house. She took a deal and is now immune from further charges implication in Nicole's murder. Per Garrett, Ashley Garth was at Jasmine's house when he and Nicole arrived. For what he says was to pick up his clothes, and from what he says, he was blinded by his love and obsession for the time for Ashley, and did whatever she wanted him to do. He claims she was as actively involved as he was, that she wanted Nicole gone. Keep an eye out for that portion of the interview coming this week. Everyone that witnessed this murder decided to not call for help, not to reach out with an anonymous tip after she was killed. Nothing. Why? Well, it's my opinion that when you get that many people who are using meth around the clock together, this is what it leads to. Here are my two takeaways I haven't mentioned yet. 1. Who was the young couple reportedly fighting under the High Bridge at the time of Abby and Libby's murder? 2. From what I heard, it seems law enforcement is going to try and bring charges against Garrett for the Delphi murders. Why do I think that? Well, because of the timing of the new sketch, second-year presser, as well as him being dropped into law enforcement's lap 20 days earlier for Nicole's murder. Garrett claims he passed and then failed his polygraph test because he was being asked questions rapidly. He claims law enforcement tracked down the throwaway phone he allegedly was using in February 2017. Law enforcement claims his phone pinged in Delphi at the time of the murders. And after his polygraph showed deception, the 45-year deal offered to him in the murder of Nicole was taken off the table immediately following that. I'm convinced that if he is suspected of being Bridge Guy, law enforcement thinks that one of the co-defendants in Nicole's murder charge is aware or suspicious of him and possible involvement in Delphi. How many coincidences before it's mathematically impossible? If Garrett is being honest and has nothing to do with the killing of Abby and Libby, it means that there would have had to have been 2 serial killers that happened to be on Ron Logan's property the same month and year of Delphi slayings. Anyway, sorry guys, I'm kind of taking this out with myself on here, so I'm much info I'm processing at once. Counterpoint here, another thing is Kirts is the one giving the info. Maybe the cops are lying to him about failing the polygraph. It's a thing they are allowed to do, unfortunately. Lie to a suspect to see if he will incriminate himself. I find it funny that he says the one cop was nice to him, giving him the old good cop, bad cop routine. Okay. And they let him smoke a cigarette. And someone responded they gave him the cigarette to get his DNA off of it. And that's another thing. Like, they might have really thought it was him and planned to go through with it. And maybe possibly just to get the case solved. Because, again, unfortunately, across the country, there are police officers who just want to close cases. Not necessarily find the guilty parties. They might think they're guilty or guilty enough, or maybe theoretically they could be guilty. Obviously, it's not proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but they want to close cases. They want that positive publicity. They want those numbers covered. Unfortunately, that is the case. Now, would they do that in a high-profile case? Maybe. I mean, on one hand, there's that much more pressure to solve it because these were 2 kids that were murdered. On the other hand, certain officers might want to do it more by the book because the kids would deserve justice. So you get both ends of the spectrum in a situation like this. Now, regarding why he would even do the interview, the interviewer posted this here. I gave him plenty of notice and the courtesy of time to go over all of this with his attorney prior to me writing, editing, and publishing the project. Garrett wants the public to know that he had nothing to do with the murders of Abigail and Liberty. There's quite a bit more coming. Conversation was absolutely fascinating, and he was very open about how his drug use contributed to the road he ended up going down. Another observer posted this. Good to hear his voice, at least. What seems like a denial. Called them little girls in a way that suggests disgust at their murder. Sounds like a kid who messed up his life. Wonder if Abby and Libby's murder will sound as young and dumb as this sketchy dude. And again, with some of these psychotic killers, they might be disgusted at their own actions as well, and there could be some dissociative disorders, all of these things, so obviously that's not really proof either way. And there's even more connections here, so Sad Obligation posted this. I would also like to add, I'm not buying the fact that he didn't know the Germans, at least one particular one. Anna Williams is Facebook friends with Ashley Garth's mother. Huh. That's weird. So here's what some more posts regarding the polygraph by Satana. Huge news. It sounded like he took a polygraph regarding the girls from Delphi, and because he was deceptive, they took the 45 years off the table and went back to offering 6 years in prison for the other murder. Huh. Curious. So, regarding Christopher Mathis, this accomplice of sorts and associate of Kirts, also on the Libyan Abbey subreddit, user since deleted posted this: Kirts seems to have the authority, yet the guy is 22 years old, the youngest. Garth got out on bail, meaning she is pulling the innocent card and will say anything to the contrary that she was privy to the idea of premeditated murder. Mathis is going to do hard time for no other reason than helping Kirts dispose of a murder victim's body. The fact that Kirts has some authority here is interesting for his age compared to others. Mom Anon responded, "It's my personal opinion that a lot of people underestimate Garrett Kirts." Now, here's the thing about that. So, people who truly research true crime, that actually go deep into psychology, profiling, and examine different cases and different criminals, is it possible that Garrett Kirts is just playing stupid? He's playing to be much stupider than he is. Now, this is more common than people think. And I've actually, I don't remember where. There was a business guy who actually had this as a strategy. I forgot his name. I wonder if he's on YouTube. He basically said he played stupid to make everyone think they were smarter than him, but he was the one pulling the strings in actuality, because if he came in being honest about his true intelligence level, they wouldn't underestimate him. They would have their guard up higher, whereas he played so stupid that they were a lot more relaxed around him, and they didn't believe that he would be trying to exploit them on all these business deals. Now, is that the case for certain criminals, where they play stupid, but they're the true string pullers? Also, is it possible that Kirts is just very unintelligent in certain areas, but there's one or two things where he's just almost kind of like an idiot savant of sorts, where there's just certain things that he does well, and that has enabled him to pull off more crimes than what he was caught for. Now, in a drug-induced stupor, is it possible he also does reckless crimes, but then he's also committed all these other crimes nobody knows about? Again, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. I'm just putting that possibility on the table because there are certain people that play stupid. Now, here's another super dark theory. This was posted by Mary Jane Evermont. Ashley Garth has the nose. I don't know if she's referring that to Ashley Garth being Bridge Guy, but she posted this: "Who was Libby having trouble with at school? I read she was on the outs with some friends and wanted to make up. Was she lured there? How was one subdued while he killed the other? I really think they are doing a great disservice by not releasing shoe size, right or left-handed. I believe 100% they have shoe prints of this guy." Now, that's a curious theory regarding being on the outs with certain friends, because as dark as it is, young teens have, and even younger, have killed their friends over spats, over seemingly nothing to adults, but in their undeveloped minds, it justified murder somehow. So is that a factor? I don't know. So circling back here, all the way back to the Chadwell and Kline theory, now that we've dissected Kirts a bit, back to this post by the Ferber, I think some folks are going to be surprised to find out Kline is or was friends with Garrett Kirts. Everything is going to make sense then. This is looking like a catfish situation that led to murder. Not a coincidence that almost 2 years later, Kirts catfishes Hamish and then murders him. And the worst part of that is he got away with it. Or at least for now. Now here's the other thing too. I've mentioned this before. Even if all these guys know each other, that doesn't necessarily mean one of them is Bridge Guy, or that they did the crime together, or that they even know who the perpetrator of the crime is. Just like in any industry, for lack of a better word, people know each other. that doesn't necessarily mean anything damning, but it could. It definitely could. So the last thing we're going to go over here is a 3D image of young bridge guy, or the young sketch, whatever, the younger suspect's sketch. The second sketch released. Curious, I don't know the origin of this, but this is the 3D rendered sketch. What do we make of it? Who does he resemble, if any of the persons of interest we went over? I mean, he doesn't really look like Kline. Does he look like Kirts more? Does he look like Mathis? Or is this just made from the catfish, from the Anthony Shots profile? Or is it someone else entirely? And what I've actually mentioned before regarding the sketches, so the old bridge guy sketch, supposedly this was the sex offender that was arrested and cleared and is no longer a person of interest. I mean, there are still some Dunning-Kruger goofs running around on the Delphi murders subreddit and other places who just cannot comprehend this. I mean, this is a police bulletin. I mean, they're hallucinating I made it up or started a rumor or something. You can go right on the Indiana State Police website and look at this bulletin that they released regarding the old bridge guy sketch. This was somebody who's no longer a person of interest. And then, of course, Jim Clemente has also stated as much, that he was arrested and cleared. So from what we know, there were people walking around who saw this older guy that seemed suspicious. And that's where the old bridge guy sketch came from. Not necessarily the guy on the bridge in the video. Although, again, we don't really know, but not necessarily. So he's arrested, cleared. Now, the young guy sketch allegedly made from a witness who saw him hanging around the bridge. Now, some people speculate that this witness was actually involved in the crime, and they just made up somebody who they know wasn't responsible to throw everybody off. So both sketches could theoretically be red herrings. Theoretically. The video could be a red herring, theoretically. Again, if we don't have the exact metadata on the video. I've gone over that in the previous episode as well. So that's all we have for now. I mean, we examined all these connections. Kline, Chadwell, Kirts. Are there more connections? And when you're dealing with shady individuals capable of murder, this might involve a meth ring. This might involve some kind of trafficking ring. This involves online child exploitation rings. I mean, there's so much that this involves and intersects. I mean, obviously the goofs out there are going to call it all conspiracy theories, but these are very well grounded in fact of the type of shady individuals in the area. Now, exactly what happened and who the perpetrators are, of course, that's unknown as of this time. But all we can do is go over the known information and basically speculate without falling for any of these logical fallacies that all these other podcasts and subreddits seem to fall for when they discuss all these various cases. But that's why Mindshock exists. So I hope you guys enjoyed another edition of Mindshock True Crime, found it interesting and informative. Let's keep the pressure and awareness up in this case, because this is how cases get solved. Justice is, of course, deserved, and justice delayed is justice denied. So keep up the awareness, like and share the podcast. You can become a YouTube member for more member-only content. You could also support the podcast by donating to a PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Or you could become a patron on Patreon if you prefer the Patreon platform. You could also check us out, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.